Okay, this is multiplayer mode with Purpleschala and Israfelcello, our first podcast. Yay! Is so good to see you.
It is
Um,
also good to see you as well.
so I guess we are our episode today is called Prelude because we're going to talk about the Final Fantasy Prelude in particular as it relates to Final Fantasy VII. Um and so Ruby, explain a little bit. So what's our format here? What are we doing here?
Yeah, that just occurred to me too. I think we what we decided was we're basically going to go through the entire Final Fantasy VII soundtrack, the entire thing, and we are going to be covering the tracks to avoid any DMCA takedowns, and
Yes.
because it's fun, and so that will be a separate video and all this will be hosted on Israfelcello's um, YouTube channel, which you should all subscribe to and tell your friends about. So, and then we're just going to go right down the list. And I think what's interesting is that Israel Felcello will be bringing in a lot of remake and the differences between the original and remake. And for
Yeah.
me, I mean, my heart is very deeply ingrained like with the OG Final Fantasy VII. I was in college when it first came out. I've over the past whatever how many decades I've played it about and beat it about 20 times. So it's very
Wow.
much like, I'm like, this is the soundtrack that this is the Final Fantasy VII I know and love. But also love remake, and I also love what they did with the soundtrack. But I think it's more present in Andrew's mind, which is good for me because then it gives me a chance to actually explore remake. Like really explore remake. I've only played through remake and beat it once, and it was great. But I think Andrew, you played remake twice, three
Well,
times.
I did go through it a second time on hard mode once
Yes,
that was
that's
unlocked.
yeah.
So, and I started a third prelude. I think I got distracted and did not complete the third prelude,
Third run
playthrough,
playthrough.
not prelude. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, all good. I knew.
Anyway, I thought it would be interesting to start a little bit with introductions. Like, there are
Yeah.
probably a lot of people listening who know us from our YouTube channels, but even a lot of those people probably don't know who we are when they don't see us on screen. So, a question for you: is your real name Purple Shala?
No, it's not.
So disappointing. The cover is blown.
I know. It's, yeah. The cat's out of the bag.
All right, well, tell people a little bit about yourself.
Oh, there's not much to tell. My name is Ruby, and I have just like Andrew here. We have master's degrees in music performance. I have a master's degree in piano performance, and he has one in cello performance. So I'm a mom, and I have a family, husband, and so most of the time I'm just a gremlin at home making YouTube, making arrangements and uploading them on the internet, and playing video games and writing about them. So that's basically what I am these days.
Sounds like a great way to be.
No, yeah, no, I no complaints here. It's fantastic. So, okay, what about you, Andrew?
Well, yeah, my name is Andrew, and I'm a professional cellist. I had a career, well, still have a career, but I was assistant principal cello with a major American orchestra for about 10 years, and I still play with groups like the Nashville Symphony and the Atlanta Symphony. I'm also a session cellist. I play with groups that record for a lot of the big video games that you all know and love.
Oh yeah, he's in God of War. He almost was the cello solo in Kingsglaive.
Well,
Almost.
I sat next to the guy who played the cello solo in Kingsglaive. But
It's almost.
a lot of the Call of Duty games.
He was a cello soloist in John Wick 4. So
That's right.
near the end, I listened for you. Near the end, I was like, there. When the gravestones hit, I was like, there he is.
I actually
All
haven't
the
seen the movie, but it has a
Oh,
great
okay, okay. That
soundtrack.
wasn't a spoiler. I'm not saying really what or the situation was, but yeah.
So yeah, I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I have a lovely wife who you see playing oboe sometimes on my channel, and our son is adorable at 19 months old. My channel is not what you would call probably a huge YouTube musician channel, just because I'm often limited in how much time I can put into it, but very, very proud of the stuff that I have up there and the stuff that we've done together.
Oh yeah.
How'd you get started as a YouTuber, Ruby?
Oh, well, I'm anti-YouTube. I mean, it's a necessary evil. Like, if I can just not be perceived on video, that would be great.
So we're basically sabotaging ourselves here.
Yeah, well,
but
no one's gonna watch your stuff unless you have video. I mean, it's like I started VGM like really like maybe early 2000. I took a break when I had my kids, and then I got back into it around 2010, and then the YouTube scene was like really like active, and so when I was first active in it, it was just people sharing MP3s on like gamingforce.org forums, and I had like an Iowa like voice mic that it was all scratchy and stuff and clipping, and people were like, "Oh, that's great," and but now, yeah, the scene's changed. So I just started like my iPad and recorded a bunch of Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy piano collection of piano opera, piano collections on YouTube, and that is kind of what like I've just been doing that since like it's just upgraded equipment, and then so this is the first time like I'm actually transitioning to a different form of content with this podcast thing, and couldn't ask for a better co-host, really.
Aw.
So yeah. All right, what about you, Andrew? And the interesting thing is Final Fantasy VII is actually how Andrew and I actually met, if you
That
recall.
is true. Yeah, maybe even my first recording project. So
Oh,
before
I am sorry it was, because that was a terrible arrangement. I'm just-
no, no, no.
Corinne, I cannot listen. When we get to the main theme, I mean, that's going to get a serious rehaul on my end. Anyways, so,
Well, I mean, I for a long time didn't know a whole lot about the YouTube music scene. I was very much a live player with my orchestra. Then I met some people who introduced me to this thing called remote recording, and I started learning to record myself with the interest of working directly with composers, helping record video game soundtracks. Pretty quickly, as I was learning to do that, I learned that, well, YouTube, it's a really important medium to sort of get your name out there, to help the process of people knowing who you are. I think my first cover ever was Secret of Mana, Fear of the Heavens, which, like,
wasn't it
one
some
of.
Imogen Heap song? I don't think that was the first thing. It was.
Well, I can go back and research. I think Secret of Mana was the first
Okay.
one.
Okay.
The hide and seek cover, that was my second. As I was learning to do this, I joined a group of fellow VGM nerds. You reached out to me. I think this was summer of 2017. Does that sound
Yes, it
about
was.
right?
Yes, it was. It was. And
Okay.
yeah. So
Yeah, and I recorded for you on your arrangement of Final Fantasy VII main theme.
don't listen to that arrangement. It's bad. So, like,
I
Andrew
had
played
so much
wonderfully.
fun though.
Everyone played wonderfully on it. It was an early arrangement. It is not one. And, like, I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, cringe. Okay, so but everyone
It's
played
still
wonderfully
really
on it.
wonderful. Really, really cool. But then, like, a little bit after that, I was going to down to Texas for other reasons, but I got in touch with you and was like, hey, would you like to maybe read some stuff together? And we talked, and I actually stayed with you and your family, and we recorded a ton of different stuff.
Oh yeah, that was fun. That was fun.
And that was kind of the beginning of a really, really wonderful musical
It
partnership.
was. It was. And I mean, and you made that drive so many times. Oh,
Yeah,
many
Birmingham,
hours.
Alabama, down
Many
to
hours.
Texas.
15 hours. to like stressful symphony auditions that I was stressed for you. I was just
Ah,
you
I'm so
upstairs,
sorry.
like practicing the Haydn. No, don't be sorry. I was stressed for like practicing the Haydn concerto like 6 hours. I'm like, oh, bless his heart, bless his heart. Oh my gosh. So glad that's not me. Anyways, but yes, very hardcore. So yeah, that was the beginning, and many fun times
Yeah.
happened since. So
All right, so we're talking today about the music of Final Fantasy VII and starting with the prelude. Ruby, there's kind of a lot of history with this track, isn't there?
yes, there is. Okay, so this is the iconic theme of Final Fantasy I in 1987. Sakaguchi gave Uematsu 30 minutes to write this thing. The game was done. Uematsu had written the entire soundtrack, and then Sakaguchi comes and is like, "Hey, we're doing a title screen, and we need music for this title screen. What can you knock up?" So he gave him 30 minutes. Uematsu wrote it in 10. And he's just like, I can't believe this has become the theme for the next 30 years for
Super
this
speed.
amazing for this franchise. So what's interesting, if I get into like just how technology at the time defined compositional technique. So the NES was, it was 1987. It is an 8-bit system. The sound chip in the NES had 5 mono channels, and 2 were pulse wave generators. 1 was a triangle wave, and the 4th was a white noise generator, and the 5th was for samples, which was hardly ever used until like later NES games. Like in 1988 in Super Mario Bros. 3, you'll actually hear steel drums. So Iwumatsu basically had 3 voices available to him. So he had 2 melody tracks, and the triangle wave generator was used for bass. And what I found really interesting was how the 4th channel, which was like, if you were creative enough, which a lot of people like Manami Matsume of Mega Man was, and like Yamashita of Castlevania, where if you were creative enough, you could manipulate the frequency or the timing of the noise wave generator to create percussion. And if you were really creative, you could manipulate the triangle wave, like the bass track, to simulate percussion. But Uematsu, in his interviews, only says that there were only 3 channels available to him for the NES, which, so just, I mean, and I don't blame him either, because he probably wanted just like something that said drums. Like
Yeah.
I said, I don't blame him at all. He was like, I'm not going to get into the weeds about chiptunes, creating percussion, and like doing these weird manipulation kind of things. So I don't blame him, because it was already like really taxing, and he had to put in like notes manually, programming the soundtrack for Final Fantasy, like the NES Final Fantasy. So it stands to reason, like if you listen to the Final Fantasy I soundtrack, it's all just 3 voices. And there's a bass and there's 2 melody lines. And you can also tell he was thinking orchestrally, like he wasn't even thinking of percussion. So with the prelude, so what he creates in 10 minutes is pretty interesting. It's ingenious. Like he creates this arpeggio, and that was a compositional technique in chiptunes to create arpeggios, because you couldn't create chords, and he only had 3 channels available to him. Like, there was only 3-note polyphony. So to create that sense of vertical like harmony, you had to think laterally, and it's really kind of because it just kind of spins into infinity and comes back down. It gives it a sense of epic scale. And then Uematsu also said in an interview, like he would play around with the second pulse wave generator. Like he would kind of he would either like change the frequency just a tad, or he would change the timing of it just a little bit, and in order to give it that kind of, quote, his words, shimmer, which brings in that crystal thing. So I think in
Exactly.
I don't know if I can actually, when it yeah, I have to think about that. So the original prelude on the NES has ascending and descending in thirds. And now in terms of harmony, it follows a 1-6-4-5 progression, which is, in C major is C, A minor, F, and G, which is known as the 50s progression. The other term for it is the doo-wop progression. The other term for it is heart and soul progression, and the other term for it is the Stand By Me progression, which begs another question, which I went down a rabbit hole because
Wow.
meaning wondering, okay, was this going all the way to Final Fantasy 15? Was this intentional? Was this an intentional thing? Was the choice of Stand By Me intentional because of the prelude? I know that's a lot to hinge on, but it just seemed like it was too much of a coincidence. So I was like 5 interviews deep. It was like interview that took me to another interview that took me to another interview. So I was like,
That was quite the rabbit hole.
How did this come? How did the choice of Stand By Me as the secondary theme of Final Fantasy 15 actually come
Right.
about? Was it affected by the fact that the harmonic progression of the original prelude 30 years back was known as the Stand By Me progression? And the answer is no, as we all. It just happened to be just one of those really weird coincidences. I think Tabata, like he had Florence and the Machine. He picked them to do the cover of that, plus 2 other tracks, original tracks that went on the Final Fantasy 15 soundtrack. But I think the choice of including Stand By Me was based on the movie with River Phoenix and Corey Feldman, because in the movie in the 80s was about 4 dudes that go on a journey. It got darker than that.
Okay. That
But
makes
yeah,
sense.
that was, and I think that is the reason why Stand By Me was adopted, like as sort of a spiritual thematic, tie-in. So yes, the answer is no.
Yeah.
But it is a really cool thing that they managed to both to tie in there. So
Yeah, in Final Fantasy VII, it's in C major, but it wasn't always that way. It was B flat major in
yes,
the original Final Fantasy, was it not?
yes,
I was thinking about this and the way the quote unquote melody is constructed. There are a couple ways to look at it. You do have this scale, you have an arpeggio, but when you put them together, if you play all the notes together, so it almost starts us thinking about a ninth chord. So
oh
it,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it is very simple in a rather deep way, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah. No, it really is, because it's like a blank slate that it's a really good. It's got character, but it's also like a nice blank, like a canvas where you can add on more stuff. Like the fact that he came up within 10 minutes, and is. I mean, it's just talk about low effort, high return. Like not low
Yeah,
effort, but it
I
was
mean,
really
very speculative. I don't like, I haven't seen any interviews referring to this, but it occurred to me starting with C major or just a basic major chord and then going to the relative minor. Kind of one of the big themes in Final Fantasy is the duality between light and dark. So I wonder if major alternating back and forth with minor is sort of representative of that duality. And
Oh yeah, for sure.
I don't have hard evidence that they were thinking about that, but I certainly think it works if you want to interpret it that way.
Oh no, absolutely. And I mean, isn't all music theory just retrospective analysis? Where
Pretty
it's like
much.
he was basically thinking this.
Hmm.
I mean, he might not have been, but it was probably buried somewhere in his subconscious. I was thinking of the fact that it was just Uematsu's. He was not formally trained as a musician, but he listened to a lot of music, and he grew. And around the time that he grew up, he was a big fan of Elton John. He listened to a lot of prog rock, like Yes. It's a common chord progression. It's so commonly used, and it's like that the timelessness of it. It goes so far, it pervades all of pop music. It goes back as far as, like, I think the Chopin Etude. Like, I think it's which one? I think it's in the F major, number 8 or something. Like actually uses a. It's I don't know. I don't really play that one, but yeah, but it's like and it follows that same. That actually, no, we were talking about harmony. Sorry, that was figuration. Okay, forget I said all that because it actually doesn't follow. It doesn't go into six. I think he actually goes into five after that. So, anyways,
Well, we
but
can
yes,
always edit.
no need to hear me playing Chopin badly. Okay. Okay, so interestingly enough, that melody, that upper melody that got added, it didn't get added until Final Fantasy IV, which
Right.
I thought was also interesting that 4 was the first Final Fantasy for the SNES,
Hmm.
which was like it seems like with the advent of every console, like there were more like going back to technology defining compositional technique. There was more channels available to Uematsu, so he felt like, oh, I can add more to this. Like the SNES now had 8 channels instead of just 3, and it was like far above and beyond. The sound chip was its own little mini audio subsystem. It had its own CPU, it had its own RAM, and its own signal processor. So there was more memory to deploy, and it used samples that on the cartridge. Like so, when the music that we hear, like definitely around the NES, SNES, and the PlayStation to an extent, to like early PlayStation was like all these chip tunes were all played live. Like it wasn't like pre-recorded,
Oh,
and
really?
it wasn't like they pre-recorded music and it played it back because that's the way PC like sound cards work. It was more like cartridge would have a MIDI, like a note data, and then like when you plug the cartridge in, the sound chip would read the note data and play the track live. So it's like a little person, like it would be playing it, using the samples from the cartridge because it was just too much memory to like if you pre-record the track and stick it on a
And
cartridge,
store
it
it.
just
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
you
that
couldn't,
makes
and then it would
sense.
just recreate. It would just like the load times would be unbelievable. Like so
So it's just
so
like
you're basically getting a live
triggers.
performance.
Okay,
Yeah,
activate this one right now.
yeah, it's getting played in real time. Like all the NES games, all the Super Nintendo games, and PlayStation. But like I said, to an extent, because the PlayStation was CD data,
Hmm.
so they had that option. But interestingly enough, in Final Fantasy VII, Uematsu elected not to use the CD audio. And because
Oh.
the reason being he didn't want that to detract from the gameplay with the load times. And also the limitations being that when you use pre-recorded audio, like when the CD stops reading the disc, the music stops. You don't have any flexibility, and we know that like with video games being an interactive media, like the music is going to change like depending on who is playing it. Like my soundtrack for Final Fantasy VII will be different from yours because maybe I'll hang out a lot on the save screen. Maybe I'll hang out a lot in this one
Right.
area. Like the player themselves are a participant in the composition, so to speak. So
Uh-huh.
that's why like when you compare Final Fantasy VII to Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy VIII almost feels next gen because they use the CD audio. Like for Libere Fatale, for Eyes on, for a lot of the cutscenes. All the cutscenes are all pre-recorded, like, and you'll see like in the credits you'll see like actual people, like they'll credit orchestra like instrumentalists, and Shiro Hamaguchi, of course, with the orchestration made a
Mm.
huge difference. So you know so yeah, it's just interesting how like the like when you get to Super Nintendo era with the Final Fantasy IV, the Prelude gets the melody. We get the melody for the first time because Uematsu's flexing on the newfound 8 channels. And then when you get to the PS1, it's almost interesting. Like Final Fantasy VII could have sounded better than it does because but he elected not to. And then the sound chip for the PS1 was just maybe like a more powerful version of the SNES chip because Sony designed both. It doesn't sound as like a great jump from what you would hear on a Super Nintendo, like
Right.
So yeah, I still like it. I mean, it's got this melancholy, like the PS1 sound chip has this melancholy, like kind of minimalist, cute, like which suits that soundtrack. Final Fantasy VII, it suits the game, like so, and it's like so iconic, that sound.
Yeah, it works really, really nicely. Now, when fast forward many, many years and we have the remake,
No
it's
limitations.
a very, very different sound. And like before this, I was listening to that prelude a lot, and I got kind of obsessed with the opening sound, which, of course, it's played by the harp, but I would be willing to bet if it is a live player who recorded that harp part, probably the sound was taken and processed in some interesting ways because it doesn't sound entirely like you would expect a harp in a concert hall to sound. To me,
It,
it's almost halfway between an acoustic harp and an electric harp.
yeah, it's
Um,
interesting. You mentioned that in regards to Octopath Traveler as well, like to the Octopath soundtrack, like some of the, like
Remind me. Now I'm forgetting.
the cello in I think My Quiet Forest Home, or there were some solo tracks in Octopath that didn't. Was it Octopath? I feel like we have had this. We touched upon this before, and I thought it was interesting because I can't tell the difference, like,
Uh-huh.
because I don't regularly play in an orchestra, and like you do, and so you have the, like, you're so finely attuned to the sound of what instruments should really sound like. So
Mhm.
when I hear it, I'm like, oh, it's the harp. It's like,
Yeah,
it
I
sounds
mean,
like
it's
a harp.
definitely a
So that's
harp,
interesting. Like,
but
what makes it sound like not acoustic?
well, it has a little bit of a different beginning to the notes than you would expect with a live harp in a concert hall. And
Like the
there's,
attack of the plucking, like,
yes,
oh, like, is it
and
too sharp of an attack, or
um, I think it almost lasts too long. Like to
oh,
me, there's too much attack. It could be a live player's recording that is put through a compressor. It could also be um, something that's processed through something like a guitar amp, something to give it just a little bit more of an electric feel. Um,
could it be? Okay, I don't know much about the PS5 sound processing, but the way past PlayStations and then the consoles have processed sound, it could be like they maybe had to compress. They had to compress it in order for it to fit into the, because like they had to do that for a lot of Super Nintendo games, like where they had to compress it to fit, and so sound had to be compressed to its, like, to the threshold of what was acceptable. It sounded really
yeah.
bad. So I don't know if the PlayStation 5 has those limitations though, because it's such a powerful system. Like, I just don't know, like, maybe, like, I don't know if those samples were, or and it wasn't a sample, it was a live recording, but I mean, I'm sure that was a humongous sound file. I don't
Yeah.
know if it was compressed in a way to make it so I don't think they
That's
put it through.
possible, but
I can't imagine
we're
them putting it
talking
through an
about
electric
also
file.
listening to it in its soundtrack version. And
Oh,
I don't know that it would
it's
be
not
compressed
compressed.
in the same
Okay.
way.
Right. Okay, okay. Huh.
So,
Interesting.
I
Well,
mean,
Keiji Kawamori, the music director of Remake, like, in an interview, he did say, like, the one of the biggest challenges he had was deciding where to use, like, live instrumentalist and synthesizers, and he said he did specifically state the prelude in this, and also Eris's theme. He said that all the iconic themes of Seven, where they tried to preserve the synths because they felt that sound was so iconic
mhm.
for the OG. So it's possible it's not a real harp. So that's what I'm getting.
Okay. Well, you can totally, as we mentioned, you can tell it's a harp without a doubt, whether it is a live play or not. But it got me thinking listening to this because I heard a talk recently by the composer who wrote the music to Starfield, Inon Zur, and he was talking about how his goal is very often to, one, tell us something that we know, something that we're familiar with, and two, tell us something new. And he said something like that he tries to do about 70% things that we know to 30% new things, and for this prelude, I think it having that sound which relates more back to the synth instruments that were used in earlier games, it's probably intentional to like connect with the players who are used to that sound. They could have just had a live player play it and leave it exactly like that, but I think it's definitely a choice to not go that direction. Now, I actually don't remember, Ruby. Was Final Fantasy IV the first prelude that actually sounded like a harp?
Yes, yes, it
Okay.
was.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Now, to me, that it again, we have intention with the nature of the game because with every Final Fantasy game, it has something to do with a crystal or crystals. I mean, exactly how that plays out is different in every game, but there's a crystal of some nature or another, and I mean, what's more sparkly than a harp?
Yes.
Except a piano, of course.
No, we can't sparkle like the way harpists can. There's something about that plucking. There's so much like it's that like when we get up to here when it's like it's nice, but it's not quite like you know, because the resonance is so much nice. Well, actually, no, it's not. I take that back because I was under the misconception it was until I did that collab with Samantha Ballard, and I
Uh-huh.
was like, oh well, you'll have a you know you've got great resonance. She's like, no, I don't. You'll see. And I was like, oh, actually, that's true because she's got I guess you can only pluck so hard, but with a hammer you can like you can actually hit the string with more force, and it rings out better. Like,
Yeah, and in the end, also, like, just going that high, the strings are so small.
yes,
And I mean, piano and harp, you guys run into the same problem. And I mean, at one point, I actually started to write my own arrangement, like just a solo multi-tracking arrangement of this prelude. And
like
well,
my face when I just thought of you doing that arpeggio.
I mean, I practiced it. I wrote it out and like just going all the way
Yeah.
up there. I mean, there was no way that was. I mean, okay. I mean, there down there it sounds okay, but once I get into this area, it just starts to get a little ridiculous, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is a bad idea that I
Okay,
need to be
well,
rescued
I've got
from.
two questions. Is it
Okay,
the pre Final Fantasy V tempo or the post Final Fantasy V tempo?
definitely the post Final Fantasy Five
Okay, and
tempo.
then my second question is four notes to a bow or separate bows or two
I
notes to
was
a
gonna
bow?
do like 16 to a bow.
The bow, the economizing. So you'd be going like this.
I mean, it's not so bad. I mean, you can do
But
it,
if you're
but
going a post fifth, if you're going, I mean,
yeah,
you'll
that's
be
true.
using it. like,
I mean, my bow control, I'm no slouch as it
oh
comes
yes,
to
oh
that,
I
but
know.
yes, we go back to just the many reasons why it was a horrible idea that deservedly did not see the light of day.
Actually, I disagree. I think it should at some point because I just want to see it. I, I just, I just want to see you do the like when it goes, the A flats and the B flats.
Some things should just never be done.
No, I disagree. It should be done. You shouldn't have brought it up. Now I'm going to bother you about it.
Someday. So, I mean, there were, to digress a little bit, when we were planning this podcast, there were some people who were interested to learn a little bit more about our arranging process. And I feel like this is kind of a good segue. I mean, we we kind of have more or less a format for the way we work. I don't know if other arranging partners do things differently, but typically one of us will sort of take the lead and make a general arrangement and send it to the other and be like, okay, tear it apart, put it back together, and we end up going back and forth a few times. We didn't go back and forth much on this one. How do you remember it playing
Oh
out?
no. Well, so like, okay, like I had done an arrangement of this for a wedding like back in 2010 before, and I scored it for violin and cello. So I just went off. I think I just ripped. Like, I was about to send it to you, but then you had your own. So then you were like, well, I arranged this. I'm starting an arrangement of this myself, or you had before, and so I was like, oh, okay. And I think that I just left you to it, and then you sent me your arrangement, and then I incorporated some of mine into the second half, and because just to vary up when it repeats, and then when you got that, you tweaked it for playability, and because I gave you like because I saw you put yourself into the violin line. You were up here. You had high G's, high F's, and I was like, okay, you did that to yourself, and so I gave you like a B flat up there. Like I was like,
I'm a
you're already
glutton
up
for
there.
punishment.
so, so
Yeah,
I did
I
not
mean,
feel bad.
I did take out at least one high soaring line just because I was like, I want to be able to knock this out in an hour. That
Yes.
will take me a little more practicing than I'm willing to put into it right now.
Yes,
And
usually
like,
I just give you something hard, like really hard. Like I have no qualms giving you a violin line that's like clearly third position, fifth position, and I'll just like he'll just tweak this to like to make this into something that is comfortable for him.
mm,
Because I find for myself, I'd rather have something harder, like and then just so I can just scale it down than have to generate something, more from very little.
mm,
That's just me though. Like, and that doesn't apply for everything. So
yeah.
it's all I'm gonna, I'm gonna have to extract my foot from my mouth. People are coming at me with these really hard piano parts. You said you wanted something hard. I'm like, I didn't. I take that back. So, but
It
yeah,
was
this is
interesting, like, when I did my arrangement version, I wrote my cello lines in where I thought they should go, actually before I had really gone back and listened to the original version. So there was one thing that surprised me, like in the Final Fantasy VII version and most of the versions that I've listened to recently, there are other parts that come in with the harp when it goes back to the original C major.
yeah.
I actually
Would
wrote in lines a couple measures before that, where we have the harmony.
Yes, I noticed that. That was such a nice lead-in.
Yeah, and so that got me thinking, where did I get that? And I think that comes mainly from the Distant Worlds version of
Oh,
this
yes.
track, which
Okay.
I played that show now a number of times, and so it's almost hard for me to
Right.
hear the piece without that incredibly ethereal choir coming in on that A flat chord on their
Yeah, no,
on their
that's
closed.
yeah, that was such a
Yeah.
great that was a really nice addition. Like I haven't heard the Distant Worlds version, but when I heard that, like when you had put that in, I was like, oh, that's really nice actually, because I'm so used to all the instruments coming in on that melody with on the repeat. So it was nice that it was sort of a nice little lead in. And
Yeah, so in that respect, our version it will resemble the Final Fantasy VII version, but there are definitely some things that we've taken from
oh
other
yeah, I
experiences.
mean, like I think the main theme, like when I did the main theme, I based that on the Distant Worlds version. Like I think there were parts of it I pulled from it. I think Eris, I had also arranged Eris's theme for like orchestra or like a smaller ensemble, and that I did pull from the orchestral version, the Distant Worlds version. Distant Worlds has some good like ideas, like,
Yeah, they do,
to
for sure.
adapt. Not like just everyone coming in on beat one. People coming in on these very
Right.
like defined sections, like a middle school orchestra. Like, it's like everyone playing in unison. Everyone comes in at this very obvious place. So
You know anything about middle school orchestra, do you?
believe me, you're going to be in that. Give them 10 years. Like,
Yeah, very likely.
but yeah, no, I really loved what you did with the prelude, and the cello choir was just great, and so I was slightly disappointed you didn't play all those really high lines, but I totally understand why.
Well,
Totally
if it
understand,
makes you
totally.
feel any better, I am uh, both feet like waist deep practicing um
Bombing mission.
bombing mission right now, and I
I can't wait.
gave myself no pity when I wrote that
I
cello
cannot.
part.
Honestly, when I saw that, okay, well, I shouldn't like bleed into bombing mission with this, but when I saw that part, your part, I was like, oh, he actually put
Yeah,
that in his part.
yeah.
Okay.
We're
Of course,
gonna
I'm
be
not
talking a lot
surprised.
more about that, but
Yes.
yeah. I wanted to ask you one question, and I think
Okay.
I know the answer
Oh,
of
wait,
this.
actually, I had a question to ask you too. I just remembered. Okay, you ask yours
Okay,
first.
so have you covered this before?
Prelude?
Yes.
Yes, but like I said, for a wedding. Like, okay. Oh, yes, twice.
Now you see where
Yes,
this is
I just
going.
remembered. Okay, okay. Well, once was for the wedding of a dear friend, like back in 2010, and we had recorded it, and like it was live in the church and everything. But that was like pre YouTube. But I think it's somewhere floating around on SoundCloud or something. And that was the version that I had modified. When you like that I had like kind of inserted into your version. But
Mhm.
the second the second instance, like this was very early on in my YouTube days, and I played it badly, like really, because this theme is actually very hard to keep this even. Like it's really hard for the to like because it just that ostinato figure just goes on forever and ever, and it's just easy to like rush it, and if it's not perfectly even, it just sounds like not so good. I don't know. It just to
Yeah.
me, it's like the biggest challenge for that is just keeping that super even. Anyways, but point being was like I uploaded it, and there was a guy that came in and tried to mansplain the prelude, and was like way too fast. Have you never heard it before? And I was like, oh my gosh, it
If
was the
only they
funniest thing.
knew
It
what
was
they
the
were
funny.
jumping into.
Well, I mean, I don't want to be like, pull like rank and be like, I've been playing Final Fantasy before you were even born, and because I don't want to do that. but it was like, like if anyone knows that there's two tempos, that there was a fast tempo pre Final Fantasy five or Final Fantasy five six on like before, and then after six onward it's slow, like the slower
Uh-huh.
tempo. So yeah, so that was a very hilarious, and I responded with with that, and yeah, so and it was such a but it was such a funny comment. I screenshotted it because I mean it was like the biggest self own. Like I just I almost didn't need to say anything. You know,
Trying to
someone else would have.
mansplain Final Fantasy tempos to Purpleschala. Not the wisest idea.
Well, it made for a great comedy, and like I said, I had a great laugh and for it. So yes, I am grateful to that whatever person. Okay, so
Aw.
my question to you is, what is now we know the prelude recurs many times in
Yeah.
Final Fantasy. What is your favorite instance of the prelude of any Final Fantasy game when and it recurs in various forms?
Oh, that's true.
And
Hmm.
the interesting thing, I think, in 15, Final Fantasy 15, it's all over the place. I think 16 is also all over the place. Like it's like it permeates like so many, like it pops up here and there, and it's like, oh, it's a prelude again. Like,
Oh gosh, I don't know if I have a good answer to that.
okay, don't think too hard about it. Just what's the most memorable? What's the one that sticks out in your mind?
The one that jumps into my head, but I'm going to have to go back and make sure I'm right about
No, you
this.
can't. No take backs.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm thinking about Final Fantasy 15 when Noctis comes face to face with Bahamut for the first time. Well, and this is why I need to actually verify that it did sound the way I think it sounded. But I have a very clear memory of that. I mean, I think yes, the prelude happened there because that's where Noct gets sucked into the crystal.
I am going to have to go back and look that up. And not that I don't believe you. Like I totally believe it. I'm just trying to remember what it sounded like, and I
We
can't.
can always edit it out if it
Yeah.
turns out I'm
No,
remembering
no, I'm sure you're
wrong.
right. I am positive you're right. Like, that because I remember that scene. I just can't remember the music that played during that scene. And I
Hmm.
think it's because I was just in shock of what was happening. I was like, oh, wait a minute, wait a minute, why am I getting what's happening? Like, so I think I'm gonna go back and listen to that. So what struck you about it? Why was that so memorable?
Well, just because
Okay,
it
describe it. Was it loud? Was it minor? Was it major?
it
Was it
it was not. I just remember it being so perfect as a use of the prelude music because Noctis is just like suspended in thin air and like in front of this divine being and
did it sound like like the prelude that we know, or was it transformed in some way?
I don't remember
Okay.
honestly.
Okay, it was but at that moment was a really perfect you know like narrative moments musically and like with what was happening on screen.
Yeah, it
Okay,
just fits so well, just not being suspended in time and space. I
I'm gonna
mean,
look that up later.
there
Now I'm intrigued.
I mean, it's one of the aspects of this melody that there is a suspension everywhere.
That is
Um,
very true. Yes. Oh my gosh. That is
so
very true. Oh my gosh. That's
yeah,
Andrew.
I think every single measure,
Wow. Yes.
there is something like
It is.
that.
Yes. And you're right. Yes. Oh my gosh, you're totally right. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like a complete. It's like unresolved, like completely. Like it's almost never resolved. You
yeah.
know,
I mean,
it's
it's
like
like we were
a
talking
4/3
earlier.
suspension.
You could imagine that it's alluding to a ninth chord, but you could also simply think of it as a 9/8
Or 9/8.
suspension.
Yes, 9/8. Right. Yeah.
So which is
It,
never
right.
resolved.
Yeah. And then yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you're totally right.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's really honest. That's honestly just actually really cool.
Yeah,
Mind blown because the fact that as he's suspended, like the cord itself is suspended in
yeah.
any kind of resolution, and yeah.
I mean, to sort of come full circle, that's one of the things about this prelude, which I just think is so cool. It is so simple, and yet there is this aspect of the harmony which is surprisingly complex and can be looked at in different ways. Both you and I have had enough formal training in theory that we know, like, things with harmony, there are often multiple ways of looking at the same chord, the same based on like not only what the notes are, but how they function, how one harmony pulls to another. So there's almost a little bit of an element of philosophy to music theory, I
Oh,
find.
we can definitely get into that, like that
Oh
for
yeah.
sure, for sure. Yes, no, I totally agree with you there, and I think I'm still kind of blown away that by your answer to this. Like really, like I'm just now, I'm like really pumped to just look up that scene, like because you're totally right. Okay, can I tell you my favorite moment?
Yes, I
My
would
favorite
love to
moment.
hear.
Okay, when I was doing my research on where the prelude has occurred and how it occurs in every game, which is interesting. It occurs in the title theme up until or then I think it was the title theme for the first three games, and then it became like the new game, like when you start when you start a new file, that
Uh-huh.
screen. Then it plays then because I think from five on it started being that there was a different like there's a different theme. And then like from when eight came along with Liberi Fatali, then it's like I think it only occurs it occurs in the game over screen, but it also, and this is my favorite instance of it, is it occurs at the end. And you played eight, right?
Yes.
Okay, do you remember at the end, after they have that? Okay, there's a great overture. Okay, this is where I want to say, okay, I think Umatsu is great, but Hamaguchi really elevated, his orchestration really elevated the score for eight, like just so much more, and also just improved sample libraries and sound fonts, like from a technological point of view. But like there is the orchestration in Liberi Fatali, and then the orchestration in the end, like the end theme when the credits are playing. There's it's like Liberi Fatali comes back and it plays some themes, but then after the credits roll, there's a cutscene at the end where it's and you see Balam Garden, okay, just floating in the water at night. And I don't know if you remember this, but it's like it goes and then like after the Liberi Fatali stuff. Then it goes, and it's like this really exquisite chord progression. And then it plays, and I love how it plays with the melody, that melody too. And then it modulates to A major. And then it goes into this. And then that's the part where Squall kisses Renoa on Balam Garden. And then like the camera pans out and like you see Balam Garden just floating. And then it ends.
That is really beautiful, and I have to admit I don't
You
remember it.
have to go back. All right, I'm gonna go back and look at that, and I'm gonna go to. You have to watch that cutscene at the end because it's
Okay.
so pretty. And I want to say, okay, I almost never. Okay, I don't want to say I never died in Final Fantasy VIII because I died a lot until you realize how to break the game. Until you realize no, it's
Yeah.
not. You're not just supposed to mindlessly grind. Okay, so I didn't. I heard it like in the game over screen, but then you're just kind of pissed off and you just want to. You don't listen. You don't stick around and listen to the game over. so, so when I heard this, I was like, oh, it's the prelude, and then it was just the most beautiful like rendition of the prelude that I never heard. Like where it was just had this it went through so many like really gorgeous changes, and then it also like transformed the melody as well. And when you're talking about light and dark, the fact when it just when it does that A major modulation, it's like so tasty.
Yeah.
When it goes then it goes in A minor. Like it's just okay. I mean, all respect to Uematsu, but I'm like, this is Hamaguchi. This has got to be Hamaguchi. I mean, because this doesn't occur anywhere else in the game. Like, this is just this. I don't know. I don't. If it was, maybe it was both of them. I mean, it was definitely both of them. To some extent.
Yeah.
But I mean, this kind of is in line with sort of the progressions because he's done a lot of the piano collections, and he actually
Okay.
he scored some of the Distant World stuff. I just want to I don't know, I could be wrong about that. He's done some symphonic orchestration or whatever. This chord progression is so in line with what I've heard him do in the piano collections and with some of the orchestration, the orchestra stuff he's done. Like so it's that it's just I don't know that's just me. I could be wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong. But I'm just part of me's like this has got to be Hamaguchi.
8 is definitely one of the Final Fantasies that I know less. I mean, I did play through it. I think I was sort of between games, and I mean, I didn't play it when it came out. I played it only maybe 4 years ago or
I see.
so, and I was kind of out to check a box like, oh, this is a game that
Right,
I should
right,
play.
right.
Let's try it out. And as a result, I don't think I have the memories of it quite that I do. Like, I mean, 4 and 6 are the ones that have stayed with me most dramatically because,
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
those were my big games growing up. Um, and 7 to a lesser degree, but
For me, it was 6, 7,
yeah.
and 8, where like
Okay.
like I like played through more than 10 times. So,
Mhm. Well, I haven't played the 8 remaster. Maybe I should pick it up one of these days.
yeah, I mean, it was yeah, I can't remember any of the quality of life changes. I haven't replayed it in a while because I feel like I've gotten a lot out of it over the
Uh-huh.
years. But I deeply love that game, and one of these days we'll have to do an episode on our Final Fantasy tier list and be canceled by everyone, I'm sure. but
There we
but
go.
eight is definitely up there in my Final Fantasy top five. Like I really adore that game, and so yeah. Anyways, but and six. So we one of these days we'll have to do a whole series on six, and we can say.
Yeah, I mean, in 5 years after we've covered every track on the Final Fantasy VII soundtrack, we'll definitely branch out and do some of our other favorite games.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this was very fun, Andrew. So,
Yes, this was great. It was so great to talk to you, and our arrangement of the prelude that we recorded together will be out very, very soon. So, everyone, please look forward to that. We hope you enjoy it.
and thank you for
And
listening to us
yes,
ramble about, you know, and sight reading
thank you
badly.
so much. And yeah, we will definitely be doing this again very, very soon.
Yes,
So,
look out for opening
keep
bombing
tuned.
mission next.
Opening bombing mission. If I don't get bombed trying to play this part that I wrote for myself, we shall
Remember,
see.
Andrew, you have 4 discs of stuff to go through. You
That's
don't
right.
burn out on the second
Pace ourselves.
Okay. All right, we'll talk to you later.
Okay, thanks so much.